Hello and welcome to another episode of the Date Your Wife podcast. We are so excited. We are here in Miami and we have some very qualified Date Your Wife experts on the show, the Freemans, Jocelyn and Aaron. Welcome you guys to our living room here in Miami.
Thank you for having us. It's beautiful.
I joke around all the time. I'm like, Garrett and I, I'll say this. We are not counselors. Please do not, the words that are coming out of my mouth are not advice, okay?
If you want to know who you're listening to, you're listening to the number one highest paid PE teacher in the world and a hairstylist. So,
take it what it is for what it is.
So listen, we have started doing the show you've seen with couples coming on, sharing amazing wisdom. You guys have been dominating in the space of couples. It was funny because when we were getting ready for the show, I reached out to a ton of people I know, like, what do you know about these guys? What do you know? What do you know? What do you know? And I was like, dude, they're awesome. Every top guy in the man space that runs movements all follow your content.
Whoa.
I didn't know this.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
I didn't know this either. Until they start talking, oh yeah, bro, I've been following them for a while, man. They're like fantastic. Their social media game's solid, but the content's incredible. Oh. So we're excited to have you today. We may get to a conversation about business.
Sure.
But we're going to have a different conversation. We're going to start off, I'd like to start the show this way. So you two met for the first time how long ago?
So 2013. So what, 12 years ago?
12 years ago.
Yeah, I remember the day. It was July 4th.
And?
It was at a gym, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Gym hookup.
Yeah.
And I had a second
I always
date.
thought I would find someone there, and I had failed so many times. But that's a takeaway. You only have to succeed once, right? And so she was by the curl bar rack, and I was working out with a guy I didn't even really know. We just were at the gym at the same time, and so we started talking about her. And all my approaches have failed, right? And so the one time I'm like, what if I was just myself? Like, what if I was just authentic? And I just walked up to her. I think I just said my name was Aaron. She has this tattoo on the back. So that really drew me in. And then I just said...
Did you say something about the tattoo?
Yeah, I think you did. I think you said you like it.
I think I needed something else to approach her with, right? So that made
that's
sense.
Good, bro. That's good game.
I asked for her email.
Which I loved.
Email
Instead of phone number, email.
Yeah. You asked for an email.
I thought it was cute.
In 2013.
Yes. Yeah.
You, and
he was
all the
nervous.
people asking for
he was very
Instagram and
nervous.
cell phones. This was distinction, though. You went for the email.
If a guy asked me that, I'd be like, oh, he doesn't think I'm cute, jerk.
No.
Oh, really?
He was being so sweet. And the excuse was, I want to give some career. I want my friend who's in the same field as you to get some career advice from you.
It wasn't a lie, right?
Yeah.
I found some common thread. So I said, a friend of mine is in nursing and you do nursing at the time. And so I followed up. We went to brunch on our first date.
Did you know she was in nursing before?
Just from, I think, our conversation that first time.
The first time. Mm-hmm. Oh, you didn't know that before the email request?
No.
Right.
Okay, got it. Okay, I thought, so had you seen her at the gym already?
Yeah, a couple of times.
And what did you think about her when you saw her at the gym?
I was so nervous. I'm like, how am I going to approach her?
Okay, so
you
you
were
were
thinking of all these, game tactics. And I'm like, I'm tired of thinking of it. So again, just went with the authentic approach.
He was not a dater. And that manifested months later when he tried to break up with me because he was so afraid of relationships. He had a book on his bookshelf, Redeeming Singlehood.
Yeah, called Redeeming Singleness was the name of it.
He thought he would be single for life.
Really?
Because of fear. And, that's something he discovered later on. He wasn't conscious of that. But then months in, and when he said it to me, because he was like, I think we should just be friends. This is getting too serious. I, at the time, was in a leadership program. And I actually had a coach who was like, well, what will you regret more? Like saying nothing? And so I was like, I don't want to be 5 years in the future and be like, what if I said something to him? What if I said, well, hey, what about the potential in us? So I called him back and I was like, I'm not letting you break up with me. Because it was fear. It wasn't, I don't think we're compatible. I don't feel an alignment there. It was, I'm afraid this is getting too serious. And so I was like, let me cut through that crap.
What did you say when she was like, no, you can't break up with me?
Honestly, because we got this question before, and if you had asked me what could she say to you, like I wouldn't have had an answer. It was at the subconscious level because, for me, I had no success in dating. I had been broken up with the few relationships that I had. And so there was such a subconscious fear there that I'm just going to be the one that gets hurt eventually, right? But at a subconscious level. So when she said, that doesn't work for me, It like literally was the thing my mind needed to hear to feel safe enough that, bro, you can go forward with this. You can trust, like this can be a relationship that you can count on. But I couldn't have told you that ahead of time, right? It was something in how she said it, the way she was being, that I'm like, oh, I'm back in, obviously. So that was my response. I said, oh, I'm in.
So did you email her?
At that point, he had my number and we were texting. We had been dating a few months.
Did you get the email and the number?
After a few dates. No, he got it right away.
At the same time?
Yeah.
I mean, you would have gone down record as the only man I've ever heard of in my entire life who got the email, sent the email, and got the date.
Yeah.
Well, no, he did. Really? He got the date from email. And then he got my number.
After the first date. You approached her with the email.
Yeah,
he didn't have the number the first time.
Right.
They went to brunch.
Holy shit, that's incredible.
Went to brunch,
so got the
email.
first date via email.
Open rates are alive.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
They do.
That's
You
right.
want to hit her junk
I'm
folder.
a great copywriter.
Yeah, you'd be like Steph's doing videos about
form.
singleness by yourself, like being two characters like the single guys do. Okay, this is great. Okay, so the email campaign works.
Yes.
That's right.
So you know how to write copy.
Yeah.
See, all the work came in, all the gameplay. All right, so the email comes.
Yeah.
You respond. What do you think the first time you get the email from the guy at the gym?
I was so excited. I had actually, funny enough, I wasn't like a big dater, but I was in a series of like 2 weeks where I was going on a date almost every single day.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because I had like finally gotten to a place of loving myself. So just prior to meeting him, I had started like about a year and a half of self-development. That was like just a little bit before him. And before that, I would settle in relationships. I had very low self-esteem, didn't really love myself, got all of my validation and worth from my partners, dated people who were not in alignment with my values. There was a lot of me trying to heal things from my childhood in relationships. We all know that. And so once I got to this place of loving myself, I literally was attracting men like I wasn't even trying. I would be asked out everywhere I went.
She had that day.
I had a second date planned for that day. But I would, you know what?
He didn't get the email, bro. So you're good.
That's right.
He got the number. He was going too fast.
Well, I did cancel it. We left brunch and I canceled the other date because I was like, it's either this or better.
Yeah.
And because it was that feeling and I didn't have that same knowing with anyone else that I had gone on dates with. And so
actually, this is a funny conversation for where I feel like we could all go, because when you say that, I don't even think I was that great of a person compared to the person I am now. Right. And it just reminds us that marriage is such an evolution. I don't think people are prepared for the changes in themselves and their partner, and then how to deal with that dynamic as it happens.
Yeah.
Like when you say this or better, like I'm such a better person.
You are. We've grown a lot.
Guy. And so, just if that's the place that we go, like that's the thing that we're so just passionate about marriage is I don't think people are fully prepared for the person they will become. And what that means for how your interactions and your dynamics are going to be different as a couple throughout all the years that you're going to be together.
Okay, so come back to the email.
You're all in on this email.
No, I found it already. You're right. We're going there. I can tell we got some professionals talk about parenting. We got some real counsel around here today. Okay, so what did the email say?
He was really just starting a conversation about like that career question that he wanted to answer for the friend. And it was very just like trying to just be friendly.
Okay.
And then we did like pen pal back and forth for like the whole week. And then he asked me to brunch.
They
like emailing.
Then you went to letters?
We went back in time. We started
not
to
how
send
marketing works. We know you have to.
Backwards. Now she's mailing you a letter.
We
and we're
actually started
sending
to have
carrier
birds.
pigeon.
You're like 6 months later, we went to brunch.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you're emailing back and forth. Okay, so did you think she was hot physically when you saw her?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And you had seen her for how many weeks prior to the email exchange?
Maybe 3.
3 weeks.
At
So
the
you
gym,
walked in, you noticed her. What'd you notice first?
The tattoo.
The tattoo, and then what'd you notice?
Just the physique.
What part of the
just
physique?
I don't know if I could say. I think the tattoo just drew me in, and then she was fit. She was attractive.
Wasn't glutes, wasn't calves, wasn't her arms, shoulders, nothing.
No,
hair.
just her way
I
of
was
being. Her way of being.
Oh, that's why you
was
asked for the email,
glowing.
because dudes that ask for the phone, they're like, "Oh, I liked her ass. It looked great." Okay, so
We're modest. We're being conservative.
I like it. It's colors. It's all right. That's how you guys are, and that's perfect.
Yeah.
We wild as shit, so it's great. I love that. We're a perfect combination to go out. We'll come hang out. We'll just blend that cocktail into this little river of
We'll
greatness.
be the vanilla among your chocolate.
Exactly.
You know, like we'll be a
and
little
we'll just
vanilla.
blend it up in one blender, and we'll all be. I think we all
Awesome.
have some chocolate.
Smoothie.
I know it doesn't become white. So, anyways. So as you're going down this path, you're emailing, you're texting, you're communicating, you are sensing it. And I get this because the piece you're talking about, the change, I was a certain kind of way with Danielle in the first 6 to 9 months we were dating. A way I had never been before.
I wish there was information like available. Like we've been married for 21 years, and like we like raised each other in a weird way.
Yeah,
and it's like we didn't really start to figure it out until like the last 5 years.
Yes,
like just how to communicate. After 3 kids, we still were like, what? We know we love each other. But why are we speaking Japanese and Chinese to each other? You know?
And isn't that interesting that it's an area? So most people want a partner. They want to get married. They want to start a family. Yet it's the least educated like place people are.
For sure.
Like there's no classes on it.
Right.
And not in high school, not in college.
Right.
And so we started educating people before it was really popular. Like we've started, we're almost 10 years into it. And people were like, what do you mean work on your relationship without counseling? You know, people only thought at the time of once you're in crisis, start to work on things. And obviously that's way too late. I mean, it's not too late in that you can absolutely overcome crisis, but it's like, you wouldn't be that way in your business.
Yeah.
You would not wait till you're about to be in bankruptcy to seek coaching, to seek support, to seek ideas, wisdom. And so why would you wait until your marriage is in shambles? And so
why do you think that's a program? Why do you think that's like how society, even the church, all the churches, no matter what religion it is, like I've watched it happen. Like programming is, don't get help, hide your shit.
Yeah.
Where
do
you
scary
think
to talk about it.
I think it's really changing now, thankfully, because of social media and podcasts are changing the conversation, and more men and women are coming out and being like, hey, this is relatable. This is going on for everyone. There's nothing to be afraid of, ashamed of. We all struggle with certain things behind closed doors. And so it's more and more, I think, shifting the conversation. I think there's a lot of pride that people have. And especially I think, and maybe it's for both men and women, but I think men especially are like conditioned to like, just get your crap handled, right? Like just, you should have this figured out, make her happy. And so I don't know. I think it's coming from different.
I mean, you ride the wave of love and passion in the beginning. And so you don't know anything else, right? We were talking about your kids and how you had the first one and then you have all of them and like they teach each other.
Yeah.
But you don't have that in marriage. It's like, you're the one figuring it out. You're the one going first. And so, I don't know, you look out there at other marriages, your parents' marriages, and you feel the companionship and the passion and the love. And you're like, well, we're going to be different. We're not going to be like our friends or our parents. And so you come into it with such an optimistic mentality, which you should. But I mean, we do think marriage is a lot like business. You want to be optimistic, right? You want to be that delusional optimism in a sense, but also know that, again, you're going to change. You're going to have the right skills and tools. You're going to come across challenges. And so you're going to need more than what you have now. And you'll be more of a person and a partner in the future. But you just don't know that because you're the one going down the path.
I think that everybody who's considering getting married, it should be like a requirement to take a course. Yeah. Like you can't get married. I'm sorry, you didn't complete your credentials. Like you can't get married. Yeah. Like seriously, like think about it. How many marriages might be saved if you like actually had some tactics and some tools going into it, right?
Oh, I think absolutely some before getting engaged, married.
Right.
And I will say that even people that come to us who've done a lot of self-development, and even in the first few years of marriage, it's totally different than even once you have kids. I feel like you almost graduate into like the next class.
Marriage college.
I mean, so much evolved for us when having our daughter, and we were already married for 7 years. And so I think that's the mentality we always encourage with couples is there's no destination. If you take your foot off the gas and think you got it handled, you're actually like behind now.
Yeah.
You have to think about this season of life, what we're facing, what we're dealing with, what does marriage require of me now? I can't bank on what I was doing 5 years ago.
Right.
Because maybe we have a young child now. So it's totally different than what it was before. And so having that mindset of, to Aaron's point, like we're always evolving and continuing to grow. Like we can't just sit back and be like, oh yeah, I got marriage.
Well, and you can't really be an autopilot. Like for us, like we had a couple years where we were in autopilot and all of a sudden I was like, I'm super depressed. Why we have the cars and the houses and all these things and I don't care. I'd give it all back.
Autopilot gets easy though when you start throwing multiple kids in the mix. You're running multiple eight-figure
It's just like you don't even know this. You're drifting. And
there's so much shit going on at the same time. And that's when communication breaks down. People stop as well. They're like searching so much on social media for some type of help. But just watching content isn't going to be enough. Like, because getting into it for conversation is like so difficult. The communication factor, just getting guys to be honest about what is really going on with them and then share it with their spouse. But vice versa, is very difficult for women to be honest because of how reactive men typically are to the truth. So did you see this version of him in spiritually like he is now? When you first go back to the gym, he's checking out your glutes and your tattoo. I know what's going on.
He was.
And she knows. I know. You know.
We all
now
know.
We all know.
Just being modest.
Just being modest behind the email campaign. I get it. Direct response marketer at the gym. That's incredible. So what did you see? Because I feel like Danielle had the same thing with me, and then I disappeared for 20 years.
Yeah.
And then I just came back in the last 2 years.
Literally. Like in the last couple of years, I'm like, there you are.
Wow.
Like it's been wild. I'm like, God, I'm a patient woman.
Yes, you are.
So talk about that
Yeah.
feel, because a lot of couples that we've met, they have that, they lose that, and they forget that. Like, what were you seeing in him, knowing that he's 100x the man he was when you met?
Mhm.
And typically women tend to be a little more advanced than the guys in this game for sure. What was it you were seeing or feeling at that time that had you go, not only cancel the second date and the other 17 coming in the next week,
but work through him attempting to break up with me
Yes.
and everything. I said, I love you first. We could talk about that. He said, thank you instead of I love you. We could talk about that
Yeah.
story.
Thank you.
Like,
the thank you email.
Yes.
Did you send her an email and tell her thank you?
yes.
No.
Follow-up
That would
email.
have
I
been
said-
great. I love you. And like you send her a quick
I'll come
email.
back to that
Thank
story.
you.
Let me keep everyone guessing for that.
Thank you.
So for me, it was a calmness I felt.
Okay.
So in relationships before, I was seeking the thrill and the chase.
Yeah.
And it was their validation, right? And so it actually wasn't true love because it was wrapped up in my own insecurity. And, I'm just getting their validation. And so with him, I felt a peace. I felt I could truly be myself. I used to have to contort myself to be like, oh, well, I really want his validation. So let me say I believe these things when I don't, right? Again, my self-esteem was really low. So with him, I felt like I could actually be my full self. I could be my truth. I felt at peace. And I mean, that's really the thing. And then I just felt an alignment between us, even though, again, to your point, like we've grown so much together. Our lives are night and day, who we are, our character. But it was just a peace, and it was like a knowing that we could grow together. And even though he didn't see it, because he hadn't started self-development yet. And
I didn't even know what that meant.
Right.
Yeah.
he
Not like I
thought of
didn't even
career
start it. I honestly didn't
development,
even know what it
things
was.
like that. And so we went on that growth journey together. I think that was the big thing too. He said yes to that. And relationships before kind of had that pride thing of like, what do you mean grow? Like, this is who I am, take it or leave it. And so with him, he was open to that. Even though he didn't really know what it was, he was open. And that mindset to me was very, very important. Like I couldn't do with the rigidity, the stubbornness, and the inability to grow. So thanks.
Had you been in any long-term relationships before?
No, I think the longest was 2 or 3 months, but she had cheated on me anyway. So that was the longest already.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So there was a lot of like patterns and trauma with women coming into this relationship, just meeting her. So it took a lot.
Yeah,
it took a lot to even like reach out. And I know I watch it happen with other guys too. We were just talking about this on the other show we did. So when a guy's been cheated on by a girlfriend or a wife, like the carnage in that guy's soul is intense. We have entire programs built just to help those guys because of the unique pain set that is. I can't run that program because like we have other guys who run it that have gone through that. So you keep pushing forward into this experience with her. Talk about like how you were able to let go of that narrative. Like just, hey, this is what I've experienced and I'm letting go. Because I watch guys drag shit their whole marriage. So no matter what their wife's saying, they're constantly interpreting it through this other filter of all this past pain of, I can't hear you what you're saying right now because all I can hear is you through my pain. How did you get to a place stepping into personal development? Obviously was a piece of it, but what were the beginning stages for you? I mean, she's intense and very powerful. Like this is a very intense, powerful woman you're married to. Like,
Oh, yeah.
There's women who sit backseat. There's women who take the driver's seat. This is the driver. This is fantastic. So you got pressure coming from her, but you got to make a decision for yourself. So how did you come to terms with you saying, you know what? I'm going to rid myself of this bullshit. I'm going to choose to be something different.
There's probably not just one answer. The first thing that came to mind was during this leadership program that she invited me to do, I was really able to see how limited I was. By the end of it, it's a 3-day event. By the end of it, I was standing on a chair and in a room of 200 people. I just felt so liberated. Now, the first day, they have microphones and you can go to the front and you can share what's coming up for you. And I really felt the sense that I wanted to do that. And so I was like, I raised my hand, hoping they don't see.
Yeah.
I got called on, went up, and I've never spoken in front of a group before. I was so nervous, like almost blacked out. Like I don't even know what I said. I was sweating so bad. And I went and sat down. And it's like my cognition came back.
Yeah.
And I had to say to the person next to me, I don't even know what I said up there.
Yeah.
But something in me loved it.
Yeah.
I loved speaking. And so by the end of it, like I said, I was standing on a chair, and it really brought out maybe this piece of me that would have never come out before. So there was a sense of developing the person that I was, and yet here's a person that wants me to develop that. So such a support in that way.
Yeah.
And so from there, I just think there's a level of humbleness that I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't have an ego per se about that much. I just wanted to be able to learn.
Mm-hmm.
The second piece I think that is sort of special to my situation is I grew up in a Christian household. And even though not all Christian boys that grow up adhere to not having sex, for some reason, I took that on like the truth. I was scared of going to hell.
Yeah.
If I had sex before getting married, I thought I was going to go to hell. So then all my relationships were short and I got cheated on. So no opportunity there. I'm literally living into a future in which the 40-year-old virgin, do you remember that movie?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I swear to you, I thought that was made about me.
Wow.
I hated seeing that movie, and I didn't want to go to it because I'm like, that's the life I'm going to be living.
Wow.
And so now when there's someone that says, when I try to break up with them, that doesn't work for me. Let's do personal development. I see who you are. It's like, why would I not want to do this life with this person?
Wow. But you had the initial response to say, I'm out.
Well, I was so scared.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. It was such a subconscious feeling in the body, just the shame I felt around, what was I? Well, by the time we were married, I was almost 30. So I hadn't had sex until I was 30 years old.
Wow.
So I had a lot of shame around, more embarrassment, I think. But I think nowadays, and a friend of mine had mentioned this to me, there's probably something about her being my only partner that actually really has us bond and connect. I'm not dealing with a lot of the past triumphs or, I mean, I've never been with anyone else.
Right.
So
well,
there's
you
probably
got
something to
the
that
guiding light sitting over here guiding you to the promised land.
Yeah.
Yeah. And inside of that, like being able to like have those experiences. Were you in the room when you had this experience at the event?
No, I had already done that program. So it was one that I like highly recommended to him and was like, do this. And then he wanted to, and he went
This is
on
like Landmark?
It
training?
is Landmark.
Whoa.
Landmark
Wow.
Forum.
You've done it.
Yeah.
He's
Okay.
done
So
all of
Amazing.
them.
done all of them.
Wow.
Whatever they are, I've done them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've tried everything to try to get free. I was
It's interesting about how you're talking about like she pushes you to want to become this bigger person, right? It's because I can tell you're probably similar to me where you're like a little bit more reserved, but that's not really who you are. So she's like exposing the person you actually are meant to become.
Yeah.
And that's like same like what I feel like Garrett has like done for me over the years. It was like I used to be like terrified of doing a podcast or speaking and all this, and it just took reps, you know? And then I'm like, okay, doing reps, I can't say, oh, that's not me. I'm nervous. It's like more natural for you to. But that doesn't mean I can't acquire this skill, you know? But I love, and I always say to Garrett, I'm like, even though I felt like I'm like, I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. You extracted the greatness out of me. And I think that that's what couples can really do. It's like, I saw something in him. He saw something in me. So you saw something in him. What did you see in her?
Maybe in the beginning, I think it was just that I actually felt I am a better version of myself because of her invitation, of her support, of her questions. So, and I mean, it's still really that way today.
You tell
me all of the big like ideas she has, right? It's like, it's not that I'm just agreeable and comply. We just put out a video yesterday on compliance. Yeah. So I don't comply. I think that's a big thing.
I watched that one.
Yeah.
It really hit home with people. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Would make
that
it
makes
viral.
sense. That makes sense.
I think you've acknowledged me many times for being bold, which
yeah.
Like you were drawn to the energy.
She's way more bold. Like if anything goes wrong at a restaurant or anywhere, right? It's like I will always sit back. Like I don't want to say things. You know, I don't like confrontation too much. And Jocelyn's like,
punch him in the face.
No, yeah,
we're sending this steak back.
A little more mild than that.
But do you like that part? Did you like that piece
I
of her?
like that because we're a couple, I can lean on that.
There you
Like,
go.
I don't have that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it
You know
makes
what
me
though? I
feel-
want to acknowledge something
Okay,
though.
all right.
That is, I think, a little bit an old story because you have become even more assertive the last couple of years, which, funny enough, has almost created like we've had to
different
work through
dynamic.
that not a power struggle, but you've become a lot more assertive in the last couple of years. And so I think that you're coming, even times where I've been like, hey, Aaron, like you're being even a little confrontational. Like, so I think that's a little bit of an old story. And if I can say, like, that's one thing I was also drawn to was that he accepted me for who I am. Because again, in past relationships, I had to dim myself because I am an assertive person. I have fire in me and I had to shrink that. I even had my partner before him, which met the criteria superficially, right? Like the fit, smart, successful, funny, all those superficial criteria, which are also important too. But he didn't accept me for who I was. He constantly was kind of like, can't you be more like lighthearted and, just not as assertive and things like that. And it's like, no, this is who I am. And I finally got to accept myself because you also helped accept me. So we helped each other become our full selves.
It's interesting though, too, because I think there's like a balance, right? It's like for me and Garrett, I want to like grow with him and I have to become more assertive. If I just sit and I'm a little wallflower, like he's going to outgrow me. So at some point I have to be like, I need to be a little bit assertive or we're going to kind of like grow apart, you know? But if I've been through seasons where I'm like too assertive and then we're butting heads. And I was like, I don't really want to be the dude. So like, I need to dial back in my feminine. And when I realized that, I'm like, okay. And then we actually compliment each other like really well. But there's always like this dance inside of marriage of like kind of growing together and complementing one another.
I think that there's even just like personality traits that are different too. Like some people refer to it as masculine, feminine, which I think there's some truth to that. But a lot of our research has been around more like personality types. And I think that every relationship that does well in creating harmony has one who's an initiator and one who's more of a responder. And that can be male or female, right? And I grew up in a household where it was like I had to learn to speak up and speak my voice. And I saw that model to an unhealthy degree, right? I witnessed toxic conflict and an intense divorce. He didn't see conflict. And so we've had to learn to meet in the middle and really be able to balance each other's energies out and create that healthy communication. We had very different upbringings.
Is your mother more like your wife or is your father more like wife?
Neither almost.
Yeah, really neither.
Really?
Yeah. Both been Christians for a long time. My mom is the Mother Teresa type, the helper. And actually I am. So what are the 7?
Oh, the Enneagram?
Enneagrams. Yeah. So the Enneagram. So I'm a 2, I'm a helper. And my mom is the top level of number 2. She is the helper. She is the sacrifice herself over anyone at any time, especially her children. And doesn't say, I mean, not only is she not assertive, she would never say that she was upset about anything.
Wow.
Even when it's like, man, that really could have went better for my mom. And something I've been trying to work through is, it's even tough to say. I think my mom has deserved so much more love from all the people in her life over all her years.
Yeah.
Her dad was like an alcoholic and there was some various abuse. He gambled and, growing back in that time too, right? You're coming out of war and depression. And I recognize that generationally, there's something that group had to come out of, right? It's like we're coming out of terrible economic crises. But my mom is the most loving, giving person. And even for me, I'm almost overwhelmed by the amount of love. I mean, I was also born like 6 weeks early. I was 4 pounds. I had whooping cough. They didn't even know that I was going to live. And, I was like poked and prodded and hit with needles like from the beginning of my life. And I know that affected me. So in terms of love languages, like I don't even really like to be touched. And when I actually realized that it was how I came into this world was so traumatizing, it almost makes sense. But it's like, I wish I could be someone that could show my mom all the physical touch and hugs and like, but she had 2 boys. She has this father that's just loves being, outspoken, but doesn't really ask questions, isn't very affectionate. And I feel sorry for my mom. It's like, I wish one of us was able to show you the love that you've shown all of us. And so it's really something I'm trying to work on. And, I want to work on for our relationship is I know there's more. And people talk about like love, right? It's like love, I think, is a scary thing. I mean, to think about opening your entire self up to accept me for all my flaws. And I think love at its highest is a very scary, very vulnerable thing. And it calls you into something that's of the unknown.
How does that? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
I was going to say, how does it work with, growing up and not like being touched or prodded or what? Like, how does that affect you guys in your relationship now? I grew up in a home where it was like, you don't talk about your feelings, you don't share your feelings, you don't hug, you don't say I love you, you don't touch. Like it's just, I didn't even know that was a normal thing. So then I meet him, and his family is very affectionate. In fact, like the first day I met his family, I missed giving his sister a hug, and he's like, Danielle hates me. And I was like, I didn't know I missed a hug. Like they do like a hug line.
To her credit, there were like 36 people.
You got to hug the cousins, the dogs. Like you're in the hug line. It's a solid 15-minute goodbye. So I was like, I didn't even know that I wasn't like touchy-feely. And I didn't realize I was hurting him and not being like that, being raised in such a family. And I was like, oh, I love you. You should know I love you.
Right.
Like, and so for me, I had to make a conscious effort to touch him, to talk to him, to hug him, to hold his hand, like all the little things. And it wasn't natural for me, but I had to create new patterns.
Same for me.
And now I love it. I'll be like, if we're walking and he's not holding my hand, I'm like, why are you not holding my hand? And I still make a conscious effort of like the little hugging, and like in the morning I come up and like grab him and things like that. But if you had to work on that inside of your relationship, being like how you were born, like, and has it affected your guys' relationship?
I think thankfully, because of the personal development we did, it started us on a path of this awareness where it's like, we don't always have it together. Everything's not always perfect. It's like, where are we now and where we want to go? And then how do we close the gap? And I think we have had that mentality. So to your point, I realized this isn't going to go that well if physical affection, even like non-sexual, isn't a part of our relationship. And right now, it's like you touch me and my body has like a clock
reaction
that starts to run down, right? So early on, if she put her arm around me,
you count in your head.
it's like my mind's like, okay, 1, 2, 3.
Like waiting for her to move her hand away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that
then
was
my
Danielle.
body would start to be like,
Yeah, that was Danielle. I would lay in bed with her, and she would be laying
I'd
in
be
bed.
like, is he asleep? Can
And,
I sneak
and
out
I would
here?
come over and I would put my hand like on her leg.
Oh,
and
yeah.
she's like, oh my God, I can't even breathe. I was like, saying, when were your lungs placed in your quads?
Yeah.
God, you have lungs in your chest. I'm not even on your chest. I'm on your leg. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
She was the exact same way. It was like, it was super hard. I remember sitting in a conversation with her father. We're in Hawaii. It was like after I'd lost everything in banking and we had nothing. We built a financial empire, lost everything. And then I'm just broken. I don't know how to deal with her. She doesn't know how to deal with me. We have no ability to communicate whatsoever. And I'm dying. She's dying. We're both dying. I'm sitting with her dad and I'm like sharing my pain about his daughter. I'm like, help me. And he's like, pulls over the side of the road. He's like construction hand guy, like just manly dude, just big and Arab, just all big. And he pulls over the side of the road and he starts crying. I'd never seen him cry before. And he was crying and crying. He looks over at me and he's like, I'm sorry. Like I did this.
oh, wow.
And he said, I love you to his mother a week before she died. And that was the first time in his whole life. So he had raised all their children, and his wife, he said he'd even trained his wife to be like, because she was very affectionate, very kissy, very lovey, and he would reject it for the first 10 years. And so she finally shut off, and she's actually become the opposite, which is incredibly critical to the point like it makes me want to puke on myself at times. I love her to pieces, but just how critical she is.
She's like
to
the
him.
most giving person, but then like to my dad, you're like, that's your husband. Like it's hard to be around them sometimes. I
So
love
you-
them both.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you got the countdown. Does the countdown clock happen now? Sometimes.
We hadn't actually talked about sometimes.
I don't sense it though. I think
I'm able to talk myself through it more now, right? Rather, it's like, that's silly. Why is that there?
Yeah.
And it's more so to your point, it was just that it's almost like exposure therapy, right? It's like, I just knew that this was something I had to work on.
having to do exposure therapy.
Yes.
And so, it's just consciously worked on. And then what I noticed first was it was a big difference if I initiated it. So I could easily start to initiate. I could hold her for days. I could grab her hand. I could be as affectionate as I wanted to be. So I kind of took the lead more so in that area for myself as well. And then that just started, I think, a bigger change in me. So now when she's affectionate with me, sometimes I even have to ask like, hey, how about you bring a little bit over this way?
I think part of it is it's not one of my top love languages either, actually. So I think it would be interesting if he was with a partner where it was like their top. Yeah. That would be probably a little bit of like, hey, I need more of this. For me, maybe it's my third. Like the top love languages for me are like quality time. And really, there should be an additional one around like conversation. Like conversation is very connecting for me, especially like meaningful conversations. And so I think that's part of what works is that it's not one of my top ones, but we
Yeah, it's not
certainly
hard.
are
What is
affectionate.
quality time?
I've never
Yeah.
heard a woman not have quality time be one of her.
Yeah, I know. So let's
Ever.
talk about this because we're talking about an enigma here. This conversation. I need some quality time. I'm like, what is this?
So
how
men are
would you-
confused about what that means.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
because women are confused as shit about it because they changed the definition. It's like,
If
a
you
guy's
said-
like, I got 4 crayons in my box. They're big and fat. Just pick any one of them, draw on me.
Yeah.
Girls are like, I got 734 crayons. They're all
Yes.
different colors. And depending on the day and the time, I change the
Pick the
color. I
right
can't
crayon,
even pick the
okay?
same fucking crayon
That's
up.
the
It's
perfect
different.
description of men versus women. That's perfect.
Yes. 4 fat crayons, a whole box
Yes.
of 1,000 crayons.
Like you picked the wrong
Yeah.
We're
one.
like, we're easy. Use any of them and draw on me.
I think every woman is obviously different because her interests are different,
Mm.
right? And so I think it is about knowing like your person and what are they interested in, what brings them the joy out of them. I
Mm.
think that's something we see with couples, and even we have a recent challenge that we have couples doing a 30-day challenge, and it's about like sparking joy. You know, we get
Mm.
so caught up in adulting.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you've got the responsibilities, and of course that's part of life, but remembering to laugh together, to do things that bring out your childlike spirit and are adventurous. So for me, like travel together is quality time, and being off our phones. Like that's a step one is whatever you're doing together, be off your phone. That's a huge step in the right direction. Oh, we're getting some, you
Oh,
know.
I'm sorry.
Just get a
I just had a
nudge.
nervous twitch there.
Okay, sorry. Do we
Sorry,
need to
I
work
need a
out?
certain
Communicate. Let's communicate.
Well, quality, you're not going to have quality time if you don't have the attention. So first of all,
Yes.
it requires attention. So I think a lot of people, they collapse physical proximity, right, with quality time. It's like, yeah, you could be sitting on the couch, but if you're both on your phones,
Mhm.
there's not going to be quality because you don't have the attention first and foremost.
And I think
I like both.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean,
It's like-
physical proximity is
Mhm.
really a must. There's a lot of data for that too, but physical proximity and attention,
It was different.
yeah, if you're
Well,
not,
listen, we've gotten to the surveys in the man world of thousands and thousands of men, and we said, hey, how many of you in the room would like to be stroked like your wife strokes Instagram?
Oh, yeah.
How many of you'd like to have as much time as Instagram gets with her fingers?
Yes.
Raise your hand. 100%. How many of you want to crush her phone? Raise your hand. So, like, this new game with social media, though, has created a problem.
I would say that women feel the same about men, right?
Yeah.
I don't even think it's just because I hear
Sure.
couples. And so I think it's all people being conscientious
general,
of devices. And so I think it's making sure where's your attention. I think it's also, if you think about the early days of dating, you're experiencing things
Yeah.
together,
Yeah, yeah.
right? You are
It'd be
not
rude
just,
if you're on your phone. You're on your first
Yeah.
date.
Oh,
You're like,
yeah.
hold on, I'm just scrolling through TikTok really quick.
but you're being intentional about what you do. You know,
Mm.
you're not going to the same restaurant every time. You're not only cooking dinner at home and, you know, eating there. You're doing things, you're experiencing. So even now, when we travel, it's like, this is a moment. This is
Mhm.
quality
Yeah.
time for me. And then even with our daughter, just moments where we're laughing and just even the simple
Mhm.
things. But it's quality because we're present. It's quality because we're both being intentional and we're asking good questions. I think that's a big key that women pick up on is the engagement, the conversation. That's one of the top things I'll hear from women is like, you're not engaged.
Mhm.
You're not asking like deeper questions more than just like, how's work lately? How's
Yeah,
business? You know, deeper questions to show that interest. That's a
Mhm.
word women use a lot is the communication and the engagement.
I would say it's like
question for
small
both you
details
girls.
though too though. Like he'll say stuff like something like yesterday you're like, hey, thanks for doing the dishes. I'm like, thank you for noticing that I did the dishes. Like
Mhm.
I don't care, but thank you for noticing.
You care.
Acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Lie.
No, because he used to
Bye.
send me like this checklist of appreciation. And he'd be like, why don't you like it? And it's like, it's not that I don't like it. It just seemed like I woke up. And so I want to give you a checklist of like things I like about you. And I was like, but I like the little moments where I'm like, you noticed that I did that.
Mhm.
Like it makes me feel validated. So I'm like, huh.
Okay. You ready?
Oh, let's.
We're going off the cliff.
Okay.
We started with email. Now it's time to get serious.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So you two both are very powerful women. Very powerful women also have a challenge in relationships, which we have noticed over time
Mm.
with their men. Because part of the dynamic in relationship is submission
Mm.
and surrender and also being strong.
Mm-hmm.
So we have tons of guys who are married to very powerful women, alpha women, very intense women, stoic women, but they're solid women. And these women are used to being very solid and in charge all the time. And they're with men who are trying to figure out how to play this game because of part, at least in our experience, these women want to submit in certain roles, put the swords down, put the shields down, and be different. And they're with guys who have been with women who are typical drivers or very committed in their way. And so they struggle trying to find that dynamic. So you and I are different. we're the same, but we're different.
Mhm.
So like my approach to this is I get more aggressive, which then causes wars.
Mhm.
And then we got other guys that just get quiet
Mhm.
and just don't do shit.
Mhm.
So what have you seen for you two in this, being that you're powerful, also different power, but she's a driver
Mhm.
as a female, which creates a lot of confusion for guys in a world where we know at some level you want to submit and let go of all this intensity and just surrender into your feminine, do your thing.
Mhm.
And at the same time, the guys are trying to find a way in to do that while dealing with that intensity.
Can I jump in? Because I like this
This is good.
question.
This is great.
And I would use different language.
Go for
But I also, I love this question too. And here's the thing. I wouldn't characterize myself as intense. And I don't take that like
Sure.
personally. I think there's like power in language. I'm assertive.
Sure.
I'm authentic.
Yes.
I speak my mind and my truth. And a lot of
Agreed.
men can't take that.
Sure.
And I see that men, and I'm not big on like generalizations, all men, all women, right? Because there's different personality types,
Sure.
there's different strengths. But I do notice that if there is that resistance to a woman who like speaks her mind, who's assertive, they have a chink in their armor. There's lower self-esteem, or how they were parented. They didn't get the positive feedback from their dad, or they got a lot of criticism from their mom, or vice versa. And so now they hear their partner who's being assertive or holding them accountable, because that's another, man, one of the biggest things that turns women off is lack of follow through, the loss of integrity. And then, so I think men can sometimes have this false front of where it's not true power. It's compensating for either low self-esteem, lack of integrity, right? So I think with Aaron, he is so freaking powerful. And so like, to me, he is the ultimate masculine for me because he's steady, 100% follows through, 100% his word, holds space for me. Like, I feel so passionate to like almost not defend, not even you, like, but the men who aren't coming out with this, like, I'm macho, I'm man, because he is so steady.
Yeah.
Like even friends of ours who've gotten divorced recently are like, you're just such a solid man. And so I know I went on a rampage there, but I think that Aaron doesn't have to fight it because he's so solid. And if I'm getting fiery, he's like, hey, I'm holding the ground, and he will bring me back to earth sometimes if I'm kind of getting too, I don't know, something
Fiery.
Emotional, fiery. So anyway,
Isn't God's dynamic perfect? We kill each other.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
That was my ex-wife. And what I mean by that is that your energy and my energy, we're the same energy. Look who we married.
Yeah.
That's
need
the
that
crazy, but
balance.
that's the crazy part about it, right? Because she's immovable and has been, while I'm so fierce. You and I are together. We're at war half the time because I don't back down. You don't back down, which means and that's the challenge a lot of relationships having too, is that guys are rising in power, or vice versa. Women are rising and finding this new voice. And we're seeing these collisions occur at this authenticity. I'll call it intensity. The authentic intensity. They're meeting and they're not sure how to work the puzzle, because you either have somebody who's always spoken, who's trying to be quiet, or somebody who's never spoken up and now they're trying to speak up. We see this happen with the women too in our hair industry, where they've been kind of backseat to their husbands. And they've made $60,000, $70,000 a year in income. And they're married to a good old boy from the Midwest who makes $95,000 to $100,000. And she works 6 days a week. They come train with us. This girl now makes $400,000 a year, and she buys red bottoms. And this guy doesn't know what to do with it because her power rises, her authentic intensity rises. And he's like, whoa.
Well, he's got to do his part too.
Whoa, for sure.
Yeah.
But this is the collision point. For sure, the guys have to grow. So as she's balanced, and that's why you are the perfect balance. Because the calming force is a power. I had to learn that power. Just like you're learning to do more than the email, punch people in the throat. And it's bold. It's like, no, you're taking, this is my girl. Stop it. Take the steak back. Don't treat my wife this way. I'm not going to tolerate that. On the flip side, I've had to go.
Take a breather.
Yeah.
Which was super weird for me. I wanted to be on the chair and yell at people. But to sit in the back and not say anything, incredibly difficult.
Yeah. So that balance is really, that harmony is really key. Anything you would add to my answer?
I think everything you said is right. It depends. Am I trying to be with communication that I feel is fiery, or am I trying to speak my voice?
Yeah.
Right, because that is different
For sure.
And yeah, I think integrity is the biggest piece. My personality traits, one of them is called conscientiousness, right? The big 5 personality. I just happen to be really high on that. Also, my agreeableness is really high. So I think a lot of it does depend on where men fall in this personality trait. I just think for a partner, I happen to fall in this trait realm that's like really good to be a partner.
Right, to balance out. But I think too, you probably feel like you can be yourself. That's what I'm just seeing in the dynamic of you. You are fiery, spicy, whatever you want to say. But like you can be yourself. Whereas if you were somebody else and they're telling you, be quiet, dim your light, like stop doing what you're like, this is me, you know, this is and it's a powerful version of you. So you're like, why would I have to hold back when I'm really just trying to impact and grow myself?
And I think that's like, just for the listeners too, that piece in your relationship, because there's so many different blends of different partners, personalities, all these things. It's, have you forgotten to accept each other for who you are? Right. So Aaron does a brilliant explanation. So you can do it better than me, but he talks about how there's using the skills, right? So are you gaining communication skills, conflict skills, all the things
give them the acronym first.
All right, you do the acronym. All right, you
we came up with PSA, like public service announcement. And the A is for acceptance, right? I'm starting at the end because I think couples are getting to this point where when you have that tension, when one is maybe rising, one is growing, you're having that voice, then it seems to be this conversation. Well, you haven't accepted me for who I really am for years, and now you're not accepting me for who I am now. But I think before you get to the acceptance piece, you have to go back to the P and the S. And the first one is you have to recognize the perception that you're inside of. And if I'm living inside of a limited perception, from Landmark, right, you have this filter going on. And if I feel over the years, because of my lack of assertiveness, that I feel that my partner is controlling and they're interested in telling me what to do with my life, well, that's going to have me respond in a certain way. And all of a sudden, one day, I'm not going to take it anymore because I'm a man. And now I'm going to come with this fire for all these years that I haven't been being assertive or sharing what I need. And now I'm saying, accept me. It's like, well, wait a second. Let's go back to where the perception here. You're coming from the perception that your partner has been controlling you for years. And until you wind that perception back a little bit, that you need to be responsible for that first, right? So the perception, and I know you got something right there. I can see it.
No, what you're nailing is exactly what happens.
The S is then skill. So once you roll back the perception, and then you can also reframe it to like, what's going to be the one that's going to serve you in the relationship? Then there's also probably going to be some awareness that you're lacking some skills, communication or conflict resolution. So grab those together. Now with that, now you're the person that you want to be. Now you can come to the table with, hey, this is the new version of myself. This is a new version of you. Now we can accept. Now we're at the acceptance. But until you've really talked about the perception and the skills, you can't just come out screaming, accept me.
When you're like being a very
reactive place. And, we know where that's coming from because you feel it's been suppressed for years. Like, hey, we get that. But let's work through a couple other things.
So come back to perception, because what you just nailed is your framework on it is perfect. It's exactly what happens. And it happens on both sides. Like women will feel like they've been suppressed forever in their truth. Like I was so dominating in my energy that she didn't feel like she had a voice. And if she did, I'd react. So then I would talk so quickly and I could reframe shit so fast that she always felt like she was in the corner. So she just stopped talking. Now that stopped about 5 years ago, where she got a voice and not a voice. She's like, hey, listen, I need you to understand some truth from me right now.
I'm a lion.
Yeah, not only
a lioness.
Here's the deal. I haven't been able to feel you for a year. You don't see me. I'm having thoughts of having sex with other men. I'm too good to cheat on you. And if this doesn't change, I'm gone. And of course, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm wake up warrior. How the hell did this happen?
You feel like it came out of nowhere, right?
Oh, completely. Because again, I was so reactive. And at the same time, she didn't know how to communicate through my reactivity. I didn't know how to hear through anything but my reactivity to her. I always wanted her to talk, but I didn't know how to listen to her when she would talk. So when she would finally mount it up, she didn't come at me with like anger. We had a bunch of that, but that was like the preceding moments. It was when she came at me calm. Hey, here's how it is. And then for 3 months, I'm like, and I'm very open with all my guys. So like, tens of thousands of guys will listen and us go through our shit. That's
I
why
just
people
didn't
say
want
it
to
now.
feel that way anymore. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't accept this.
Yeah.
And I was like, it could be scary to share with somebody who I have 4 kids with, but I have to. Like, my soul feels like it's dying, and we're eventually just going to part ways anyway.
And you know what? One of our favorite phrases is, and I'll have you continue the story, but you don't have to end the marriage to end this version of the marriage. And that's what you got to do. And we've had one of those moments as well. And I want couples to hear that. If you're at a point of like friction, frustration, or a lot of even pain in the relationship, you can have those moments of, we're drawing a line in the sand here. And let's have the hard conversations. Let's talk about it. And of course, do it in a constructive way. But let's be real. And you know what? We get to start a whole new chapter together.
Yeah.
We do have we came up with this guide and a process. It's called the Steps to Rebuild a Marriage. And I think what you're saying is so powerful. It's not just that you come together and say, like, we're drawing a line in the sand. You do first start with, I'm drawing a line in the sand for myself. I'm not going to live this way. But there's a way to come to it, which I feel like you did. And it was, these are my non-negotiables. I really would like to create this future with you. And you know what? It's not going to keep going this way. And I want to be on board with you. And I'm just laying out, here are my non-negotiables. But if you keep reminding the positive intent that, like, I'm in this with you. We got married. The commitment is there, but it doesn't mean that we stay the same people. So here are my non-negotiables. And you know what? I recognize there's probably some things that are there for you. So we had this 3-4 hour conversation. Maybe it was 7 years ago now. And I at least had to say, look, thank you for hearing my non-negotiables. And you probably have some too. I'm willing to hear them. And I'm also willing to make those changes for you. Right? Like that's where you're starting to move this together.
Yeah.
So you two were moving and growing. And this is an interesting dynamic because people come to me now and there's a massive amount of open relationships opening up. A lot of people trying to find a path. They love each other. They're connected with each other, but they're in so much pain. They can't connect. But people like us, are you guys open? We're like, no, it's not we choose that at all. Mm-hmm. And yet at the same time, they're struggling to try to find this way. And I was looking at I had one guy say to me, he's like, listen, monogamous relationships are impossible. Mm-hmm. He's like, if you go back and look at even the Old Testament, it's impossible. These dudes all have like 300 women. I've talked with women, single women in their 40s, powerful women, beautiful women, Latinos, blacks, whites, Asian, doesn't seem to matter color, doesn't even seem to matter race, or nation, nationality. Mm-hmm. A lot of women are starting to say, listen, I've kind of succumbed to the fact that I'm probably going to be a sister wife. Because I can't seem to find any guys out here at all that are quality enough because I'm not going to reduce my standards. So I'd rather be with a dude who's a high value guy than be with these fuckboys. Mm-hmm. Like I'm tired of it. I just can't do it anymore.
Wow.
So the shift though is, and as we continue this conversation with these guys and these gals together, this frame of growth, it's incredibly crazy. Mm-hmm. Because if she's growing as a woman, I'm growing as a man, you're growing as a woman, you're growing as a man, and we're saying, you're mine, I'm yours. But she's growing. That means that this non-negotiable game is shifting all the time.
Yes,
because where you're at today is going to be different than where you're at a year from now. Yep. Mm-hmm. So how have you two navigated the evolution of this growth cycle to where you're growing, she's growing, and you're like, wow, I see a different world now. We got to come back together with this.
Mm-hmm.
I think from a practical sense, because I know we've been really throwing out a lot of like philosophy ideas, theories, from a practical communication sense, having some frequency of a check-in. So we have a weekly, a quarterly, and a yearly, and there's different purposes for each one. So weekly is much more of like the day-to-day. We want to make sure
where's your love account at? Yeah. How could I fill that up?
What are our priorities this week? Like,
what do we appreciate about each other?
The quick course corrections week to week, right? We're in the trenches in life.
How long is this meeting?
Those can be 15 minutes if that's all couples have. We've got 5 questions in a whole guide that couples can work through. So it's a way to course correct quickly because what we find with couples on our sessions, so everyone's busy, right? How are you? We're busy. Mm-hmm. Everyone is. Okay. That can't be the excuse to not communicate. Right. And so, yes, you've got kids, you've got work, you've got all the things, but you need to huddle together and have a quick check-in. Can be 15 minutes. Some of them are going to be an hour because you've got a little bit more to work through. But anyway, that's the week-to-week course correction. Quarterly is a more in-depth relationship review. So there's a list of the different areas of the relationship, including intimacy, including communication. And you say, do I feel this is a strength in our relationship or growth? So you get to be honest with each other and proactive. Let's not wait till we feel distant 2 years from now and we haven't talked about it. Hey, it's only been 1 quarter. And
say your partner rates intimacy at a 6 and they rate communication at a 5. I mean, that's better to know now until you're at a place that you were when you were at like 1s and 2s. You don't want to be there. You don't need to be, right? So you can have these quarterly conversations where maybe your satisfaction in these particular areas drops to a 5, 6, something like that. And it's like, okay, well, what change do we need to make? It's easier, right? Than when you're at a 0 and now you're talking about, are we ending this? Now we're at the non-negotiable piece. It's just, it's a lot more difficult.
Like you can't get too far off course.
Exactly.
Now you got to go up like 6 levels instead of like 2.
Right. Exactly.
Is this quarterly thing like a weekend?
It can be if couples are able to do that, which some are able to do that, some aren't. It can even just be, hey, wake up before the kids do and have coffee together and do this check-in, but put it in the calendar. And so that's quarterly. Then yearly is much more of like a big picture. What are our top values this year? Some people can set their visions, their goals and things like that. But so it's more of, what do we want for this next year? And what do we want to remove from our life that might be distractions, which is a big piece, because it's not just about setting more goals as a couple. It's like, hey, do we need to actually course correct that we've been on our phones too much and things like that? So all that to bring back a practical tool is to have these check-ins, put them in your calendar, and make sure you're communicating before you do get too far off track.
It's just such a good reminder too, because as you were telling me beforehand, 5 months ago, you guys are in California and you're at this restaurant, and all of a sudden it's like something radically changes for you to move your whole family and everyone out to the other side of the country. That's a value-based conversation, right? That's a vision for the future that you obviously both need to be on. You're not going to do that every year, right? You're not going to move. So you don't need to have those conversations as often, but for your marriage to really be on the course that you want it to be, that God's calling you, the two of you, to be on, you need to check in on those on yearly, if not, a few years, but they're not going to happen all the time. And you make the bigger lifestyle choice changes. But as far as your interactions, your communications, right, you can do those on these smaller time frames. Yeah. And to us, like, that's just how you keep the positive evolution going.
And here's the thing. So we talked a little bit ago about like defensiveness, even though we didn't all label it as defensiveness or the reactions. If you are sitting down to be like, hey, let's have our weekly check-in, right? You're not going to then, I hope, go into that and just not take any feedback that your partner gives. Would you do that in a team meeting? No. So that same mindset of you being open to your peers' feedback, to your boss's feedback, to your co-founder, whoever that is, you need to have that same openness to your partner. And so the questions that we have couples do in our check-in are very much more like, how can we be an even better team? And I'm going to be open to what you say. I don't have to defend myself. I think that's a big thing he and I feel. Do we get defensive from time to time? Of course, we're all human. But our mindset is, this is my partner who's on my side, who's on my team, and they're just thankfully opening up to me and being, as opposed to holding it in. And I always call it in our content, little seeds in marriage become big weeds when you don't talk about it. So if you have that frequent check-in, you're open to each other. You're not going to take, things personally. And you're also not nitpicking. This isn't about like bringing up little things that don't matter. It's really like, this is our chance to just really be on the same page, proactively communicate.
Also, it's just an intentional conversation. So you're not tapping your partner on the shoulder while they're trying to finish a call, right?
Or at midnight.
It's not at midnight. It's not when you're going to sleep.
It's not like a problem-solving session, is it? Because that's like him and I feel like we'll sit down. We're like, let's have a check-in. And a check-in almost comes across of like, oh, our kids are being crazy and this, and then it becomes like a problem solving, and then it becomes like a trigger, like we're triggered by each other's words. And I'm like, well, that check-in just turned into a fight. How did that happen?
So here's a pro tip, okay? So question number 1, this is in our guide, and so you guys should start with this, is where's your love account at from a scale of 0 to 10? Here's why. Because that little, when you talk about like, we're now like nitpicking or like we're taking each other's tone personally, maybe your love account is low. So you're trying to communicate without really being like in sync and talking about connection first. Because when you do approach the next questions, which can be logistical or talk about parenting and things like that, you want to be doing that from feeling like in sync, in harmony, connection. So if you talk first about your love and connection and you were receptive to each other, okay, totally hear you. You're a 7 out of 10. And here are the things I can do better for you this week. I'm on board, babe. Now you'll be more open to the next topics that you guys.
Do you have sex before these meetings?
I think it's a variety of things. They happen at all different times.
Sometimes it ends up being like during
Right?
it. Yeah, we
You're
stop.
like the
We just stop. And then,
this meeting is adjourned. Let's go. I was imagining because like I think from the frame of most guys that I have run with, they feel very open to these conversations when they feel like their love is filled.
Exactly.
And their love is filled typically through physical connection, through sex.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got the other side, which has been the challenge between us over the years, has been me learning how to fill up her love tank and then put the agenda of it is not get laid. The agenda is I want to fill your love tank to fill your love tank. I think that took me like, we've been together 23 years. I'd be like, I wash the dishes. I'm like,
yeah, I hope you noticed.
Did you see how I did that?
Yeah, it's not transactional.
Well, it was very transactional for me. I was like, did you see did you see this house? Look how clean it is.
Yeah.
I'm like,
that is a turn off for women, just so you know.
I found that out.
Good. Men, listen.
Testing. Yeah, that didn't work. So there's an agenda game in it that is about filling it. We play the different with going on dates twice a week. We're real extreme with stuff on this. These checklists are going to help. We'll go on dates twice a week. We started doing an overnight once a month. And then we started going on 4 week-long exotic vacations. I get it. We're spending a bunch of money in that. We're at a stage in life we could financially do that. But it was accomplishing the same thing for us, which was getting her unplugged from the kids. You'll find this.
Mom
we'll talk
mode.
about it. Yeah. And mom mode with 5 kids is intense.
Well, and it's like people think of like mom mode as like light and feminine. I'm like, oh no, I'm like in a war zone. I'm like in business. I have my business mom hat on. Like, and like, so me being with the kids all day is no different than him being at work all day. We were just fighting different wars.
And can I say too that parenting dynamic, because I'm sure a lot of your listeners, if not the majority, are parents, connection is going to look different in all different seasons.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people just try to anchor to like know how it was in the early days, right? Or right before we had kids. And it's like, okay, we have young children. Some people have a lot of support. Some people, we talk to some couples, they have no family near them, haven't found the babysitters or nannies they trust. And so you can't only use date night for some couples as the only time you're going to connect. So you've got to think outside the box and say, okay, you know what? Maybe we've got a newborn and you know what? We're not ready to leave our daughter, for example. All right, we can't do a night away. How can we connect? Let's wake up early. Let's have coffee. It's about the intentionality. It's making time for each other. We talked about not being on devices. And so I just wanted to say that to everyone of like, really think about the season you're in and really think like, what can connection look like now? Because here's another big bad thing to do in a marriage is say, we'll get close again once our kids have moved out.
Oh, yeah, that's a problem.
Which is a big mindset I hear from men, to be honest, right? I don't think women are much more of we need to stay close, right? Like they're much more of focused on relationships. And so they'll be like, I'm trying to reel you in, right? Whereas men will have that mentality of like, look, we're busy right now, okay? We'll get that time together again when the kids have moved out. And it's like, if you have that mentality, you may feel so far apart from each other then. So what can connection look like now in this season that we're in? It has to be a priority.
Think about even like really big like businessmen where they're like, we got to focus on the mission. And it's like, that's important, but don't be so focused on the mission that you lose it all.
And the why. What do you say you do it all for? Family. I challenge men all the time. We have a workshop coming up we do in person and there's a values section and almost every man puts family, women too. It's a top thing that people write. And then I'll be like, okay, like, but would your attitude and your actions at home really show you're doing it for family? I see you working hard. I know that. No one doubts that people aren't working hard. I work hard. You work hard. We all work hard. Everyone is. Don't lose sight of why. And your why is your family. And your family isn't just about being in the same space. It's also being with each other, being connected, being close, having good conversations, feeling the love.
It's just a good point to say that what you value isn't just what you say, because that might not line up. Your value, we can see everyone's value by how you act. So your value is what you act out. It's not just what you say. Now, ideally, you're the type of person in which what you say and what you do and what you act out is the same. That's not the case for everyone, right? And so I think just when it comes down to being honest about what you value, right, you're going to see that through your actions, but you can communicate that. And sometimes you're going to go through seasons where so our biggest moment was we thought we were going to lose everything. And that was right when Sky was born, our daughter.
We hit our rock bottom.
And I had to go manage construction management and make sure this property didn't fail so that we had everything in it. And so long as I'm communicating, like we recognize the season that we're in, and we're either going to be on the street with our daughter if I don't do this. So I'm not going to be able to be as available. I'm not going to have the capacity when I come home. If when I come home and you make dinner, I'm a little short with you and I'm like pissed off about something that happened, I'm going to need some more grace. And my goal is that if I can focus, like I'm not going to disrespect you. I'm going to maintain a standard. You can remind me if I go beyond an agreement, but give me like 3 months. I think 3 months of this and I'll get us out of it. Right. So I think if you set that and then you come back to your value conversation, even if it is in 3 months and you're reviewing, like, are we out of the woods? Right? Can we refocus towards what our value is now? Or do we need to keep going? Right. And so you can't just keep kicking the can down the road forever. Like, oh, I need to keep focusing on my business. And now you're like 10 years down the road.
Well, it's interesting too that you just said like there's like seasons of hustle, right? And even with Garrett, like he pushes so hard, and as the wife, one of the hard things that I have a problem with is I'm like, don't burden him, like he's in a season, and so then I find myself withdrawing, and I'm not trying to. I'm just almost trying to respect his space and like be like, what do you need? What do you need? But I'm not like I'm almost like don't burden him. And so I have to remind myself like, hey, even in this season, I can allow more grace, but I have to continue to communicate and find these little moments, because I have experienced it in the past where I'm like, he's going to go out and hunt and I just got to be grateful. And a lot of women do that. And so I always say like, hey, like we understand the men are doing this for their families, but at some level, I feel like it's my responsibility to kind of keep that connection here. Absolutely. And I feel like a lot of women with producing men, they forget to do that. And like I said, I experienced that myself in the past, and then I'm like, well, I feel disconnected because I didn't put forth the effort of communicating and making these little moments count.
And remember that phrase, like you and everyone listening, like the seed will become a weed. So you have to check in with yourself. Is this important to me? Sure, my partner is really busy, but is this thing I'm holding in because I don't want to either start a fight or I don't want to burden them, or they're really busy? Is it changing the way I see them? Because if it's changing the way I see them, I've got to talk about it.
If it changes the way that you see them, it's going to change how you feel about them. And if it changes how you feel about them, it's going to change how you act around them.
Yeah. So remember, like you got to talk about it when it's seed before it becomes a weed.
That's so interesting that you say it affects how you see them, because there are times I can tell like we're connected because I'm like, you're hot.
Yeah.
You know,
oh, for sure.
It changes how you see him, and then he comes to the room I'm like, God, take a shower.
Yeah.
And he doesn't look any different. Like, where is our connection level out of that moment? And then I'm like, oh, okay, we gotta like plan more dates, or not dates, or just time together so we can get back to like that reconnection where when he walks in the room, I'm like, oh yeah, he's mine.
So you guys just had a baby
3 years
ago.
Yeah, 1 day apart from your youngest.
I know, they're like both December babies. So we have watched a couple of, what I'm interesting back on this, but 70% of divorces, 60% of divorces are filed by women in their 40s. Interesting.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and also peak marriage dissatisfaction is at year 10, which is often when people have young children. Yep.
Which is our next topic.
Yes.
So you also see we've got data points on over 65,000 guys. It's a lot. Just focus on men, what their perspective and experience is. Mostly affairs and disconnection and chaos is created after the birth of the first child. Because this guy's going through a place. He's got his woman. They're connected. They're bonding. It's great. It's wonderful. And then baby time. So what have you guys done to make sure that sexual intimacy has stayed a priority in something in the marriage? Because what ends up occurring is that there's a distancing. Woman is dealing with her baby. Guy's like, hey, cool. So I was patient for 9 months. I have to jump on to write a book called What to Expect When Expecting Penis Edition. For dudes that are about to have their first baby, because there's all this shit for women. Here's what you're going to expect. And I'm like, dude, get ready for the desert. Your woman has been stolen from you, from this little thing you love. So that's when it begins. Then they stack another kid. 10 years have passed. It's complete fucking chaos. This is where a lot of guys end up in my world. Like even the events I was at this last weekend speaking, you can see the pain in their eyes, see the pain in the woman's eyes. They're just trying to reconnect. And this connection they used to have prior to the kids, and kids are now in the mix. And it's then they're toddlers and teenagers and all the things you're going to get to go through with this beautiful daughter of yours that we've run the gamut on with 25, 17, 13, 5, and 3.
Yeah.
Wow. So what have you done consciously to create a reconnection intimately and sexually with each other post-pregnancy That's allowed you to stay in communication, because this is where we notice where everybody starts to isolate. Guys will shut down and they'll go to work, focus on the kids, and pretend they're not hurting. Go to porn, masturbate multiple times a week, feel horrible about being in the porn, starting to distort their minds and how they're seeing the world. They can't see their wife the same anymore. She becomes more disgusting to them. He now starts to look outside of him. He gets attention at the gym. Some girl asks him for his email.
Yeah. Watch out.
Watch out for that killer email.
Yeah,
The email's coming
it's
out
a good
every
pickup
time.
line, everybody.
What, did you ask for Instagram? No, your email. Let's go. So what have you guys been able to do? I mean, the fun part is you got to focus. I focus on men. So like I have a deep reservoir of knowledge there. You two are focusing on couples. We don't pretend like we're a couples expert at all. So what have you guys seen? You get the extra pressure of all these people following you, which is a benefit because it forces you to figure shit out.
And be accountable.
Exactly, yeah.
Or you two unravel in front of everyone, but get divorced and are like, we knew it. Which happens to a lot of couples in the couple position.
I got a quick thing and then I want to definitely hear from you. So going back to the mindset, the perspective again, like our mindset is that this is a lifelong journey. We do not expect every season to be the same. And I think that's a place, honestly, that people get trapped. And I will hear in their language, because what they'll say is, I want to go back to how it was.
Yeah.
You're not in that season anymore. You're not in the honeymoon phase anymore, or you're not 22 anymore, or you're not 35 anymore. You've got kids, you've got teens, you've got your empty nesters, you're older. Be in the season that you're in and stop trying to go back. So again, our mindset is we're in this for life. So you know what? We're okay with the peaks and valleys. We're not going to let them be long though. So we talk to couples all the time. You're going to get off track. Do not think that marriage is just, oh yeah, we're always trucking along and we're always good. That's a fantasy and that's going to set you up for disappointment. Expect to get off track a little bit, but be looking for when you got off track and catch it a week in, catch it a month in, instead of years in. And so we have that mindset. So even when we had our newborn and we were, obviously, I was exhausted. You're very exhausted as well.
You had to heal too.
I was struggling with healing. And then we got into this multifamily deal that we shouldn't have partnered with the person we were in. He sabotaged the deal. We truly almost lost everything. So we have this young baby, stressed about that. So I wouldn't say our intimacy was hot at the time. Honestly, we're stressed. That is not going to rattle our bond. It's not going to rattle the security that we feel because we are in this for life. So we, as Aaron talked about, we communicate about it. Hey, I know we're not really prioritizing this area. What do you need most right now? We have those check-ins and things like that. So I wanted to speak to the mindset first, and then I could come back to like even more recent years. Past that, 2022 kicked our butts. So we've definitely gotten out of that. But what would you say?
The thing that came to me was, and we never set this up initially, like this is what we're going to do with our marriage. But we realized we were doing this later on. We've never rejected the other person's initiation. And so it's not something that we have strictly coached anyone on, because you have to recognize we're together all of the time, 100% of the time. Our daughter goes off to a Montessori school. We run this business together. Like you couldn't spend more time. Some people might equal, but we spend all the time together. So that just needs to be put in perspective, because other people go and do other jobs and they're away from each other. Maybe someone's watching the kids, they travel. But there's definitely something to that. At a deeper level, if you feel like you've made attempts and you've tried to initiate intimacy with your partner and you've gotten rejected, whether it was an actual rejection or not, maybe they were tired, they didn't have the capacity. And so them saying, hey, no, not right now, came off to you as they rejected me. I recognize that we have not done that to each other over the years. And it wasn't necessarily set up that way, but I think we did recognize, hey, it's probably a good thing that we really communicate about where we're at. And we pretty much always said yes to the other partner's initiation.
Conversation that you had? You're like, hey, we're never going to like reject one another?
I think it's more
I think we did like later on, we realized that we were kind of doing it almost by accident. We said, this is probably a good thing that we make sure we're clear about and we continue.
I will say too, that I think what allows us to be, because I think some people could hear that and then whether it's the male or the female, they're like, see,
you can never say no to
you
me.
should not say no to me. But we make intimacy a priority, which intimacy is both emotional and physical. And so we actually, for January, we had like a special edition challenge for our big thing with couples is 30-day couples challenges. They love them because it's something specific they can focus on. So we had one that focused on both emotional and physical intimacy, and couples loved it because that's the formula. And everyone is different. I actually know some relationships where the woman has more physical desire than even the male, right? So, but it can be predominantly men. And for me personally, I can't be like, oh yeah, I'm all in physically, baby, if like we haven't talked about our feelings in weeks. I don't know where your head's at. I don't know where we're at. Like if I haven't been able to be vulnerable, that's just not how my body works. And a lot of women are like that. Also men. So I say all that to say intimacy should be a priority in your relationship. And remember, intimacy is both emotional, both physical. How are you making them both a priority in the relationship?
I'm not under the illusion that if I've caused a conflict and I've done more damage to her, that now I'm just going to come back later without any discussion and try to have sex with you.
I haven't apologized to you, but let's go to the bedroom. Like that's a turn off for women. Like
if I could invite men into this, if men would be a little bit more in their foresight of what needs to be repaired, and you're making sure that your partner feels repaired, it's not just this lingering conflict, this lingering damage that's been done, I think your partner's going to be much more open. I think they're going to be more ready when you do initiate. But when we're just letting things build up and I can swear and I can escalate real quick and then I just let time pass, and I think that's enough for you to be now ready and you desire me now. It's like when I just put you down earlier in the day, I mean, I just don't have that expectation. Why would I think that?
What would you suggest to like, so I feel like this is happening with Garrett and I, like you get in a fight or your couples get in a fight and then it's like, at some point it's like, you got to let that go and not bring it back up into conversations. So
this is a big topic.
It's something that's happened for us over years. I'll be like, but I'm not that person anymore. So why are we using that to throw daggers at one another?
Conflict is one of our main topics. Our last book was called The Argument Hangover. A lot of our content is we cover the 3 C's: conflict, communication, and connection. And so, I could go on for days with conflict because I'm really passionate about it. Growing up in a very high conflict family, and I really my daughter is seeing healthy conflict, so I'm a cycle breaker. Let's go. So I could go on a rampage about it, but we have agreements for times of conflict that we treat them as laws. These aren't I'll try not to yell at you. I'll try not to cuss at you. They are laws in our relationship, and that holds us accountable. So our 4 are: we will not yell. We will not name call or label each other. We won't bring up the past as ammunition. So that's a big one for couples. And then we won't storm off or shut down without saying we're going to come back to it. And there's a lot of reasons for every single one. We don't have to go into them. But to your point, we don't bring up the past as ammunition. And if you're bringing up something that's past related, whether it's the last week or a year ago, it's a sign you didn't actually repair. And most people don't know what a repair conversation is. Couples suck at repair because most people weren't modeled it. If you were lucky, your parents showed you how to say, I'm sorry. In a marriage, sometimes I'm sorry will cut it. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes there's more to say. And so learning to write this down, everyone listening, learn to have a repair conversation because it is so crucial to maintaining intimacy, to maintaining connection. It's not just the date nights. It's not just communication. It's making sure that clutter doesn't build up between us.
What are the 4 again?
So no yelling, no name calling / labeling, no bringing up the past as ammunition, and then no storming off or shutting down without saying, we'll come back to this.
Well, shit, if you did those 4, it'd be great.
But what do you do? Because here's the thing, though. At some level, there's times you have to have grace because we're all human. And so for me, it's been like one of these places I'm like, well, shit, that happened. How did that spiral? And then I'm like, we can have this repair conversation, but I want to let go that that didn't ruin our marriage. For sure. And I used to get to this place where I'm like, I would almost just feel guilty. And so I had to almost let go. I'm like, hey, I had a human moment. And as long as we have this conversation of repair, I feel like I can kind of move on. But it took me a long time to kind of figure that out about myself.
Yeah, we need to have that sprinkle of grace. Yeah, we're not going to be perfect. Do we aim to keep those agreements 99.9% of the time? Yes. Do we once in a while raise our voice? But what we do is we gently remind each other. So if we feel it's getting escalated, we'll be like, hey, let's keep our agreements. One of us will say that. We'll take a pause. I mean, we're just so committed. I'm, especially because of my upbringing, I am convicted to truly have healthy conflict, to not do damage to each other, to not get too dysregulated. So we will cool off if we need to. Hey, we're getting too heated here. Let's both cool off for 10. And honestly, for us, if we go cool off for 10 minutes, we're able to come back so much clearer and actually say what we mean without being mean. Write that down. Say what you mean without being mean.
Instead of being so reactive, you're like, I just need to not react right now.
Yeah.
What is your book called again? The Argument Hangover?
The Argument Hangover.
Are the 4 in there?
We do list them there. Yeah.
The 4 in there.
Yeah. We also have that in our conflict guide. If people are like looking for resources, we have entire strategies for conflict in our conflict guide. We're big on like actionable tools.
Yeah.
Couples to go through.
So last topic. You ready?
Yeah.
Number 1, you two are great.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
You're
thanks.
great too.
Yeah. Like, listen.
I feel like we're just at dinner.
Fun talking to you guys.
I know. It's like you're just the amount. It's fun to be with people who have put this much time and energy and focus into one particular conversation. Right? That's how you become a master, a lead at it. It's no question why people listen and follow to you and follow your counsel and advice. And why all the guys that lead movements that I know have been plugged into you. God as a conversation, right? So you have all these tactical tools that we're dealing with. And for years, I thought, hey, me and my trainers and our curriculum and our books were the transformational process, right? And I came to terms with the reality about 3 years ago that we've been pursuing this game of truth, but transformation wasn't ever something that we ever delivered. All the truth did was bring God in. And when God came in, transformation, atonement, rebirth of a human being and of a couple could happen. This spiritual divorce that we call it in Warrior was like, so guys are like, I can't do this marriage anymore. I know. It sucks. Your marriage sucks. You know it sucks. She knows it sucks. You both know it sucks. So we got to get divorced. And they're like, so I didn't say you had to get separated, legally divorced. I'm saying this shit doesn't work. So we got to do something different. You can be two new people. The piece we've found is that God is the only way that's possible. We can give all the tools and tactics and systems, but in the end, there's a moment they're going to have their own encounter with rebirth with themselves. How does God play into the conversation for you two as a couple and also with everything you're building and the impact you're making? Because if marriages continue to burn to the ground at the rate they're doing and the game coming with the kids underneath us, who are not getting married, they're not having kids because they're watching all the chaos. What has been that piece for you two as a couple? And what's been that piece in just what you feel called to do with this movement that you built?
You want to take it? I mean, for us, it's a very personal journey because I had to overcome a lot of religious trauma. I was raised Jehovah's Witness. You mentioned being raised. Was it just you raised Mormon? Both. Okay. And you knew that when you met? Like, okay. So yeah, I had to overcome like so much fear and conditioning and everything from the Jehovah's Witness and just the fallout of how my parents' divorce went and like lost all the family. We were disowned because we left the religion. And so I had a very, very negative feeling about faith, religion, God. I couldn't even talk about God till I was in my 20s because I was so angry at how it completely tore apart my family. Lost my grandparents, aunts, uncles, everything. So I was like, God conversation, stay over there. And so when I met him, he was, as he had mentioned already, like born and raised Christian household. I met him. He read the Bible every day. Like he was a real Christian, right? Read the Bible was a top priority for you. And he didn't push it on me. He really didn't. Even though he was so devoted and he knew where I was open about where I was at, he never pushed it on me. He was never like trying to sell me on it or anything. He was just open to my questions. And that made me feel really safe to explore it. So him just answering my questions, him just authentically being in his faith was that was like, wow, that's interesting. I like the way he's talking about it and how that feels. So he really is the one that brought me back to God, to faith. And for us over our decade plus together has been a journey of really like that relationship with God, right? And we talk about it and still even grapple with questions. You know, to be honest, I still have questions because again, all the conditioning. So I will still be like, hey, I'm doubting this. Like, can we talk? We were driving to pick up our daughter the other day and I was like, I have a God question. So we like talk about it. We grapple with it. What would you have said? What would you say about it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it really bonds us for sure. I mean, being able to have those types of conversations. I know your big question is, how can these things, in the world happen to kids? Like how can a God let that happen? And it's a very hard question, right? And whether people go down we're free to choose and God wants us to choose him. at the end of the day, the path is all the same. The path to God is the path of growth, of the path of marriage, the path of life. Like, to me, it all leads to the same place, and it's the highest place of value. And when you do that, I think it just reduces the level of significance of all the other things that we put so much weight on. If God's at the top, then and all this other stuff starts to become a level 1 or a level 2, right? You get you just get peace. That's where peace is. That's where you really get love. It's where you get grace from. So at the end of the day, if we're all pursuing that in our marriage, I mean, you're pursuing God anyway.
And then to answer the business question, we share our faith with people, right? Whether we mention it in our podcast or on interviews, it's not a central part of our brand for that reason I mentioned before of all the trauma I had gone through. I just don't feel it's my purpose to like kind of in a sense, like have that be the only way I serve people.
Right.
Like my purpose is truly to help people create harmony. Yeah, I'm that's my purpose and that's my passion. And I think we just share it authentically and people pick up on it. Some people don't, right? We also have followers from all over the world. So all different religions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's a big part of our personal relationship and what we talk about.
I think you guys have something that's very powerful. And I think it essentially could like save a world. Like think about like not to
not a big responsibility.
Responsibility, but like that's the calling that you're choosing because there's so many marriages like falling apart off of like simple tactics that you're teaching that our parents didn't know how to do, that we were raised in a certain box in a certain religion, and it's not necessary anymore, and it's why families are falling apart. And so I think what you guys are doing is amazing. So I want to give you kudos for that. And I think that ultimately God gives us kind of callings in life. And when you serve that higher calling, that's when you have the bigger impact.
Yes. And Aaron does guest sermons. Like we are brought into churches. And again, we just don't like market, like it's not marriage and Christian marriages only, right? But he's an incredible guest pastor. I mean, incredible. People standing ovations, crying in the audience. And so he has a real gift in him to connect messages, godly messages to people. So it's like, it's there. We more so, we walk the walk, right? We don't just talk the talk. Like we are being it. And I think people like pick up on it.
Yeah.
Well, you two have both been called by God. And you're delivering God to people's doorsteps in the greatest ministry ever.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. And now I know why you chose it.
Yeah. Oh,
This one brought you back to God.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And talk about a grounding force. And you stayed pure in your commitment for as long as you did so that you could hold the weight without the baggage of what you two are called to do.
Wow. That was
huge work that you've done on yourself, even amidst all the times you would have felt so alone. It's been very fun for me to just get to meet you at a soul level, dealing with men, watching their process, watching you unfold, and the respect that you have for him, that you deliberately show. This is what men want. They want to be seen and they want to be respected. And you did it today on the show so effortlessly. And the dance between you two and your voice, my guy, speak. Like you have it. You have a gift. You have the game. And there's a tone in it that comes from God through you. And I would listen to you speak. There's a tone that comes. This tone was the tone I had to find.
Oh, wow.
So there's a piece in this that surrounds all of us. And what you're doing, I am telling you, in the movements that I lead with men, this is the biggest and the most painful part of their entire lives. They can build empires and make hundreds of millions of dollars, and they will sit on my couches in complete destruction because they just want their wife to see them,
and a lot of them
to respect them. And a lot of it is felt like it's too late. So there's a lot of work on helping guys get to the grounded place, but you two definitely have the tactical tools. Like we said before, man, listen, if you're listening to the show, these are your people. Like we might be your gateway and punching in your face, and I'm going to talk shit about the email game with my guy here for his whole life. We're going to have fun with it because that's bro life for me.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a respecting. I'm like, well done. Knife salesman at a waterbed convention. My guy, well done. You two are doing amazing work. we could do the show for like 15 hours and just not even scratch first 5 chapters of your book. So argument hangover. What is the best? I know you guys do the challenge. talking about the challenge. Challenges work great too. We love it. And we have so many couples. We've started little small couples things here and there. But the truth is that's not our calling.
Yeah.
Our calling is to like help people like you that get our people get to know you and others so that we can help them.
Right.
Because we can't help them with everything.
Yeah.
Like we went down the path and tried it. We got done after the first like month of doing these couples trainings and we're like, who are we fucking kidding? We're podcasters. We don't even know what we're doing. We should stop doing this right now. You guys look more qualified. You do it. But you guys have put in the work there.
Thank you.
But the challenge, what's the best way for them to start down
everything that they want to see is at meetthefreemans.com.
Okay.
So you've met the Freemans, meetthefreemans.com. That's also our Instagram handle. And everything's there from our in-person couples workshops. We've got one next weekend in Arizona, guides, challenges. Kind of every resource is there, really.
Perfect.
At every step that couples want.
Meet the Freemans. You guys just made it easy.
I know.
Yeah.
Easy to remember.
domains.
We have a podcast that's on there. But so basically every resource could be found there.
When I first found you guys, I was like, don't they have a reality show somewhere? Like that name is
Literally, that's what
I know.
she was. I think they have a show. I think they have like a reality show. I was like, I don't know if they got a reality show, but their Instagram game is solid. I've watched like 35 of your videos, like in a row. I just watched. I was like, dude, these guys are scripted the shit out of this. This is so good.
Oh, thank you.
This is how not to not be a partner. This is how to be connected. I'm like, that takes a lot of planning.
Yes.
We do videos.
Like, yeah, that happens.
Yeah. That's the experience.
It really helps that we're still coaching couples like 2-on-2. Honestly, Jocelyn will just write down, like we're in a coaching session and she writes this down. So then the next day we wake up and she's like, this is exactly how they said it. All we got to do is act this out.
Or things from our experiences too, both. But we just have
the Christmas decoration
access.
She wanted that one because
the Christmas decoration was hilarious.
I was
playing through 15 scenarios with Danielle. Yeah, I'm going to get to that. I'll get it. Yeah, I got it.
It blew up immediately because everyone relates.
Everyone knows. Every dude has been in that place. I get it. Sometime in the next week, I will do that. I'm committed.
And then I'm mad.
Just stop asking me. Why are you asking me again?
Exactly. All right. Well, meetthefreemans.com.
Yeah.
Follow them all on social media. This is going to be a big hit. This show's going to be great. Our people are going to love it.
Great conversation. Thank you.
They're going to love it. All right, babe. You want to wrap it up?
No, you wrap it.
No, you got it. Your money.
Guys,
Let's go.
Got it. All right. I was like, I was so into the moment. I forgot we were even doing a podcast. All right, you guys, if you are listening to this show, you have one responsibility. Share this show. You know it will have impact on other people, and that's what we ask you to do when watching this show because it's all about impact and reach. And we have couples in our home because we want them to share their messages. So you guys, thank you so much for being here on the show. Meet the Freemans. The reality show drops soon.
Yeah.
And
You guys can do one.
single week for another episode of the Day Your Wife podcast.
Also, the show itself brought to you by Wake Up Warrior. All of the tools that we need to guide men into a powerful place. You can get free tools and training as well as join us on our free Bible study we do every single week on Tuesdays, virtual with thousands of men. Learn to find power in the word, translate that into wisdom, into wealth, and into work. So check it out, wakeupwarrior.com. And that brings us to a close here with our second episode in Miami on the Date Your Wife podcast.